When Mr Yates surveyed this area in 1775 for his famous Staffordshire map, the area known today as Merrill Waterfront was mostly rural. He would have no idea that years later, the most advanced iron and steel works in the Black Country, if not the world, would begin there. The story will be told in two parts. This first part will be the history up until World War I, and the second part will take us to the sad end. So join me, the Black Country History Hunter, as today we look into the full history of the Round Oak Steelworks.
There's hussies in the Lang Street Row, standing up on wheels, man, and then the chiels that fed the horse, for black as a pair of deals, man, and never thing they eat the brood, but only coast eat, man. He was the queerest beast I saw, he had wheels for feet, man. The beast that roared enough, we gave you water, earth and stains, man. We run and seek a fear for rain, the thought we'd break our veins, man. Till by and by we stop it at the place, got something gory, but ne'er a word to that he say, but only sit and glory.
Hello everybody, and I hope you're having a very Merry Christmas. Today, obviously, the 23rd of December. Today, 42 years ago, Round Oak Steelworks closed its doors for the final time. People like my father lost his job, and he would never get the opportunity to get the long service watch like my granddad did, and others like you've shown me have. You know, I've seen such amazing pictures being sent in of these lovely watches. So yeah, it closed. I was 1 year old at the time, and it would have made a profound effect on my life because my family suddenly went from a good breadwinning family to a family with little. We survived, and I'm not moaning. You know, I loved my childhood and I really did enjoy growing up, no matter what we had. But the bottom line was this: when Round Oak went, I know it wasn't the only works in the area, and some hung on a bit longer, but when Round Oak Works went, it ripped the heart out of the community for me. So many little businesses around Round Oak, within 25 miles, depended on the fact that we made quality steel, and we did. The best steel in the world. This episode, we're going to go up to World War I. In the second episode, we'll talk about Operation Nimrod and how they actually sold all of our industry off. But, you know, and we will be speaking to people who lived through it, people who were actually there and what they thought on the day it closed. I'm standing, as you probably tell, on the fence poles. This played a pivotal role of the life of Round Oak, with the Penet Railway cutting through here in the 1829, connecting up the Earl of Dudley's collieries with the great works itself. But there's also another part of this that I want to talk about quickly, and that is the Stourbridge Canal. So Mr Whitworth in 1775 drew up a design for a canal for the Earl of Dudley at the time. And there's the design he drew. And here is the spot where he picked for the beautiful reservoirs that it would need. And you can see I'm standing here now on one of those embankments. And then again, there's one at the top there as well. 1982, the work shut. It ripped the heart out of the community. More about this in the second episode. We're going to be talking to lots of people that worked there. George Hutton, Ronald Walters, John Jones, to name just a few. And these have all got amazing memories to talk about. Some funny, some not so funny, some tragic, and obviously the end itself and should it have happened. But that's in the second episode. Today we're just going to concentrate on the history itself. So the pools went in to feed the Stourbridge Canal. We're going to walk down there in a minute and I'll tell you a little bit about Bromley Works. Before I do that, this also had parts of the Pennet Railway running through it. So in 1829 the railway was made. We're going to go down there and talk about that a bit later, and some of the engines that worked here. But all the steam went in 1963, but that wasn't the only steam thing to go. Trains were not the only thing that was steam at Round Oak at that point. So Round Oak had steam cranes, and you can see one of them steam cranes here with Mr Prosser on it. So in 1951 this aerial photo is taken. You can clearly see the crane there. I just find that absolutely amazing, guys. Later on in the video, keep watching. We are going to take a few bits from Mr George Hutton and Ronald Walters, but most of those interviews are going to be in the second video in the new year. Here's a picture of Round Oak at the beginning in around 1860s, 70s. You can see those three great chimneys. We're going to talk about them later, and the way it's orientated. That Pennet Railway running across the front there. There's a famous crossing of the Great Western Railway over it as well. We'll talk about that later as well. There's so much to talk about. Today we're doing just the history. We're running up to World War I. I want everybody to understand what we lost. Most of you probably do, and a lot of you actually lost your jobs there. And if you didn't lose your jobs, then infrastructure around the area depended on Round Oak, you know. I know there was other steel industry, and some of it went a bit later than Round Oak, but for me, this is about Round Oak, and Round Oak ripped the heart out of the community. When it closed on the 23rd, my dad came home. Wasn't a very nice Christmas for everybody, I imagine, then. But just there was the Fens cottage. Now here you can see some wall. The person who lived in this house had to go down this hill, because that's where the well was, just there on the map. You see it? You had to go down this steep bank here every day to the well, and this is part of the original path that cut through the middle, where before the middle pool was made, and then it went again, and then it came back again. But at some points there was so much water being used in the canal that it actually drained the middle completely. But look at that piece of beautiful bar iron that would have been rolled, no doubt. You can see him rolling here. This would have been rolled in one of the Earl's works, you know, one of his rolling machines later on in his career. It's a beautiful works, and down there they would have fetched the water. Oh dear, yeah, absolutely amazing. So in there's still archaeology to be found on the fence cottage. His job was to control the water in and out of the pool, which would have been an important one. Not enough water, boats would bottom out. Too much water and they would overflood, wouldn't it? It would flood. It'd be wasting water. And the whole idea was to keep this canal running. And this is the very beginning, so the tap would have been somewhere there. Yeah, unbelievable. So there's wide waters there, guys. So yeah, wide waters, back in the day this would have been bustling. So in the late 18th century, 1770s, this would have been the beginning of the Stourbridge Canal. And the Earl put in a big wide waters area here. So it was a place for boats to come and moor. You can actually see the area here on this map, how big, how wide it was. Absolutely massive it was. I'm walking down now. On that side was the Bromley Ironworks. Again, that was brought in with Emer, Saunders and Haywood opposite. And you can see them both on this map here. They were brought in because of the canal. So the canals, they basically were a huge draw for iron masters such as the Gibbonses and the Haywoods. And these men, names that you've probably seen on street names around here. Mr. Gibbons especially, we'll talk about him later. He worked one of the first furnaces on the Dudley Canal at the level. Again, what we'll learn about later. But yeah, that was wide waters, and the Earl also had two beautiful basins on that side, or wharfs. So there was two places where you could pull your boat in and get loaded and unloaded of the coal from the Waller's Colliery up on the top of the hill. The Earl had extensive works around here, extensive works, and he needed to connect all that up, so he did. So the Bull's Head would have been here, and just over there would have been the Shingler's Arms. A road ran through this grassy area on the Dell called Blucks Lane, now long gone. Some of it's still left at the back there behind Footsole, but this was a very industrial area. And just there on my left now, that's where you would have found the boats at the time pulling up and getting loaded and unloaded. You know, we're going to go down the Pennet Canal later, and that's absolutely amazing in its own. But down there on the right was Haywoods. Again, very early works, you know, I found reference to it in the papers, 1820s, 30s. A map of it here, and you can see the blast furnace, these big round blast furnaces producing pig iron, which is why the Earl wanted the round oaks in the first place. The round oak wasn't producing iron, it was turning iron that was being made in the area into good quality wrought iron in the beginning, using puddling process. Again, we'll talk about that later, and eventually using open hearth. But again, that's more for later and a bit in the next episode. But yeah, over there, look, that's where there's still a drain there now. But these were two amazing wharfs there. All gone, forgotten. But I'm sure if you dig there, you'll find the brickwork under them. And the same here, on my right-hand side here, was amazing top of the range works. On the right-hand side there, it had a bay. And you can see how it dips down, see how it's lower on that right-hand side? That used to be where there was water in there, and that was covered over. You see on this map, you see that little cover? So when a rainy day, the boats could come in and they could work. Whatever they were moving about, they were covered. But this is 1840s, guys, you know. This map is 1850s, 1860s. And you can see that beautiful steam engine there. I just love this stuff. And it talks about the steam engine when it's being sold in 1863. As you can see here, it mentions the steam engines. Would have been Watt's design, I imagine, big beam engines. Industry right and round, you know, on the Dell. You just wouldn't think it, would you? There's so much industry in this area. We've lost so much, man. And it was also tipped on. There's tip down that side and tip in here, I imagine. But yeah, the fact that them trees are pretty old, I reckon that, you know, this was just left. And in this dip here is the canal. As time went by, the pools become the perfect place to dump. So iron industries up and down the canal started dumping its slag. Slag is a waste product that comes from when you make any kind of steel, iron. You refine the iron to make it better. Impurities come out of it. To look at it, you'd think it was a solid iron block, but it's not. I mean, the whole, all around me is a graveyard to Round Oak Steelworks and other works. So yeah, obviously industry is nothing new. For instance, there's evidence of it in the Saltwells Wood. If you look at this LiDAR image here, those pits there is actually coal mining from the 14th century. So they're bell pits, so they'd just dig down, hollow it out, and that would make a shape of a bell. And when it collapsed, they'd dig another one. And that's some of the earliest mining in the area, and it was not far away from where round oak would one day sprout up. Yet in the early days, the coal being dug up in that bell pits in the Saltwells wasn't being used for iron making. The iron making back then was basically using charcoal. So when iron came over in about 800 BC, they'd make simple bloomeries, and out of that they might get enough iron to build to make a sword or an implement. And the key was trying to mass produce iron. That was what the key was, and that came later, as we'll find out. Over time, these small bloomery furnaces, we got bigger and bigger, and we started to call them blast furnace. So blast furnace is basically a big oven where you put the fuel and the iron ore in the top, you blow air in, a chemical process happens, and out the bottom you get slag, which floats on the top generally, which they scrape off, and a molten iron, which runs out the bottom. Now in the beginning, this molten iron was run into beds on the floor made of sand, and because when it was tapped into the bed it looked like pigs being on a suckling sow, they called it pig iron. And it was great iron, but the problem was, because it was being mixed with the fuel, it was high carbon, so it was too much carbon. So iron and steel making is all about the control of carbon. Now Blast carried on using charcoal until Avery Darby came along with his coke. Yeah, so Avery Darby got the credit, but it was Dudley who first started playing with coal as a way of making iron. In his forges in Penet, he had several there, apparently making munitions during the Civil War. And because he was on the losing side, I imagine he got tainted after that as well. Yeah, so in the late 18th century, Mr. Court came up with a process called puddling. So the idea is, we've got this pig iron, it's great, but when you cast it, it's brittle, hard, but it's too brittle. You know, you can't really use it for much. So he came up with a process where you reheat it, stir it, and it can be turned into wrought, malleable iron. So they call this a puddling process. And so it was in the dawn of the 19th century that this puddling process started to take effect. But the key to unlocking the vast mineral wealth of the Black Country came when Mr. Wilkinson started the Bradley Ironworks. So the Bradley Ironworks was basically the first ironworks that could use a steam engine to make blast furnace pig iron. And this was a revelation. Suddenly, the blast furnaces were not tied down to the rivers. There was a power source. This is when our canals, our vast mineral wealth all came together to form the perfect storm. And within 20 years, the Black Country was born. Right, so I'm now standing what was the entrance to the old Hartshill Ironworks, just down there. Not much of it left now, it's a derelict area, and that is the old Pennet Canal. I'm right at the juncture here now, so this is where I'm now standing. The old canal was the idea of a man called Mr. Smith. So when one of the earls died, he had the idea of bringing in a new person to invigorate the lands of the earl and to make the estate better. And Mr. Smith definitely did that. One of the first things he did was to build this canal, folks. So this canal is 1840, and it's a beautiful little gem. It's hidden away now. Most of it's gone, but we have got a lot of derelict left to my left and right. The basin itself, which was up by the Aldi's now, is gone, sadly, but here's a lovely aerial photo of it. You can see that beautiful crane there. It might have been steam, would have gone on to become diesel like the one at Round Oak did. So yeah, I'm going to walk down here now and just have a little look at the canal that Mr. Smith set about building. That is the Pennet Canal. Still water in it, because it's very hard to get in. So yes, by the Hartshill Works, which was there, there's a video I've done on that where the explosion happened. I bet Peter, the boiler's in here. Boiler exploded, killed a lot of people. So you're walking with me now as we walk down this path on the Pennet Canal. So like I said, some of it's still left, a lot of it gone. That's beautiful though, isn't it? Old 18th, 50s, 60s brickwork there. This would have had a shelter above it. I've got a picture of that, I think, from a bit earlier on than now, but some of it still existed. Look at the colour of that. It's almost like a grey. But yeah, as we walk down, the Hartshill Works are on that side, and the Hill and Smith Works are on this side, and the cable works that would come eventually as part of Round Oak. But this was built before Round Oak became a thing. Once he'd put this canal in, the business started to boom in the 1840s, well before Round Oak was thought of, and it was just another way of joining up the Earl's interests. Now down here, there's a beautiful bridge. I've got a picture here of the bridge, and you can see a steam train on there. 1951, there's a steam train that's passing this bridge just as the photographer in the aeroplane takes this picture. Now the driver of that train is long dead now. All around me there's history now. How beautiful is that, folks? And this carried on up into Parkhead, but obviously it only goes so far now, and I'm not going to carry on up any further. So yeah, this was the canal that Mr. Smith put in, and an amazing canal it is.
You know, when I was a kid, I used to go and pinch these canal boats.
Did you?
Down by Baldwin's. I get a piece of rope and I go down and lash one on. Once you get them moving, you know,
yes.
a kid could pull them.
I've been told, yes.
And anyway, one come by one day with the workers on it and all the stuff on it. I said, mate, can you give us a ride? You know, I remember them kids. Well, they let me get on, and they let me get off. They kept going for miles and miles. I thought they kept going down the back of the bottling glass and all down there.
So you had to walk all the way back.
I thought, hey, they had to get a bit close once, see, and I made a jump for it.
Did you make a jump for it?
And I thought it was miles from home. I thought.
Took you anywhere?
Oh, there was only laughing.
This is the place where the first level furnace went in, the first blast furnace. So this spot was chosen by Mr. Croft to put the first level furnace in. Later on it was bought by Mr. Gibbons, but it would have been here, and it would have been, if I was here 100 years ago, or more than that even, the blast area in the 1790s would have been open blast at the top. There would have actually been a platform such as this where they'd push the goods into the lower area, so they'd charge it from the top. It's called hand charging, and it's a very, I think there's an example at the Black Country Museum, it's a very early way of blast furnace. So yeah, Mr. Gibbons went on to buy this off Mr. Croft, and he made it very successful. So much so he rented another one just not far away. He called that one the new level, and so this one became known as the old level. Now why level? There's three reasons. One, I think it's this one personally. There was a drain that drained some of the coal mines in the 16th, 17th century called the level. They were so proud back then, as we are now, of our industrial prowess, that they actually named the area after the drain. But or the fact that it's on this level of the canal. Canals have different levels depending on what branch it is, and they operate off that level, if you know what I mean. Or it was on level ground, as some say it might be, as Mr. Knox thought, but I do believe it's the first one. So we started renting down there, but Mr. Gibbons was an amazing man. He did a lot for the area. He lived in Corbyn's Hall, not far from where I live. And around 1820, he built two more furnaces there as well as these. So he was doing very well off the iron surge, you know. There was a war on at the time, Napoleonic War. During that period, they needed a lot of cannon. So blast furnace was blasting as much as it could. The puddlers were puddling as much as they could. And the processes were all happening side by side in this area on the Earl's fuels. And about the same time, he came up with this thing where the slag, which is normally run off, what floats on the top is the slag, that pours off first. They keep tapping the slag off. But instead of just throwing it away, which is what was happening, he started casting it into blocks on little trains, and he passed this train under, then unbolt the sides, and these blocks came out. And you can see this wall here, which used to be on Level Street by the Copthorne. That wall was destroyed in the 60s when they redeveloped. But it's a wall from 1820s using the bricks that he designed. Unbelievable. This was at the front of his own works. Not long after Mr. Gibbons started using his stonework for brick walls, this wall went up. And the idea never stayed with him, because as you can see, this wall outside Penet Church in Penet is also made up of amazing slag from the work. So his idea lived on. And if I'd have been here in this spot 100 years ago, another important part of the soon-to-be round oaks would have been putting in. Just down there, I would have seen men digging. In about 1828, they would have been digging out a gorge here to make an incline running all the way down to Himley. So here I am on the Penet railway line. So one of the first engine to run on this line in 1829 was Agnoria. Agnoria being a Roman goddess of industry. And she's a beautiful engine. And an interesting fact is, and something we should be very proud of in the Black Country, is that the second of that build, she had a sister, well, a brother, and the brother was a lion, Starbridge Lion. Now, he was the first steam train in America. That Goliath of a country. Look at all the history in America. We were the first to send it a steam engine, and we sent it the Starbridge Lion. What an amazing thing. And the sister to the Starbridge Lion ran on this line in 1829. Single track line. Up and down, spent as much time going forward as backwards. So yeah, this is it, guys. This is where the train ran up and down, and this would eventually go on to play an integral role in Round Oak's story. I mean, while I'm here, I'll tell you about a story I've read. There was a gang in Pennet of about 30 or 40 people that would routinely steal from the coal from the wagons here. So basically what would happen is, there's a big corner there. If you see on this LiDAR image, you can see that corner curving round. That's part of the railway. And before the trains hit that, they slow down, even stop. Different reasons. But when they stop, men would jump on the tracks, onto the back of the wagons, and they'd throw lumps of coal down. Then that coal would be bagged up by the women and children. There'd be lookouts on the bridge up there, just there. And yeah, they'd shout if there was anybody coming. And apparently on this one occasion, the copper had waited in the bushes for 2 nights, waiting for these thieves. It was common, it was happening all the time. So anyway, on this morning, about, you know, the train pulls up here somewhere, with the train luggage going right back, and they descend, all these people come out of the woods, and the copper's like, they suddenly come from nowhere. And obviously, he managed to catch hold of one of them. And I don't know if one of them grassed him up or what, but I reckon that there was actually clubs back then, late 19th century, where there were actually gangsters in the area who you paid insurance to, and if you got done, it paid you fine.
Bought the coal from Cradley off the main lines, up into Round Oak, up that incline. Well,
Yes.
that's where they had a line man. He was on top of the trucks, chucking the coal off.
Oh my
And they
God.
caught him there. And you know what Lucy Foley was? They said, if you don't clear off now, we shall go and get the police. He says, go and get them, I'll wait here. And he did. And he had to go to court. And he told the bloody judge after, you don't think I'm going to get bloody well off, don't you, out of a few buckets of coal?
Man, they were robbing the coal. I'm now, guys, on the estate, the Wallace estate. You see that old building there? That's an original Round Oak building. Behind me, you've got the old railway sheds. My granddad would have worked here originally. He would have started off by polishing the engines as a boy and worked up to become a driver. And these gems are here still. They're hidden away. And as you can see an aerial picture here, how it would have looked in 1951, and maybe for most of its life. It was a huge area. And in the 1963, when all the trains got scrapped, a lot of them were put here. Yeah, and a lot of coal was kept not far from here, just there in the 40s. You can see this photo of the coal. Coal was getting nicked left, right and centre from the works, you know, right through its history. And George also tells me about, in the next episode, how he saw the engines being cut up in the 60s here, some of the old steam engines. My granddad started here as a boy, and he left here with a gold watch as a driver, internal railwayman, proud man. So if you've got a day off and you've got the kids, don't bother with Dudley Zoo. Come to the Wallace Trading Estate and show them the old engine sheds, you know? Real British history, real black country, proud history this is. Hey, there ain't much of it left. If bricks could talk. Just walking up now to the original site, past Merrill on the Dudley Canal. I want to quickly tell you about something I find amazing. So I came across an article talking about how the Great Eastern, the big ship of Brunel, was broke up in 1889. And then I read an instance in one of the Acorn magazines I'm collecting that it was thought that the safe room in the old building of Round Oak site where we're going now had pieces or plates from it. And that makes sense because the modernisation happened around then when they put the new open earth in, and that new building could have been built then, the new offices, and the strong room could have easily used plates from it. You can see a picture of it being cut up here. And then again, that lovely picture of that room. So it could have been. And another example is this. I think the blast furnace, sorry about the wind, the blast furnace, that actually the new level, it got actually at some point, it got clad in steel. And you can see the plates. They could easily be, you can see how they're all riveted. The way the rivets are so close, that could easily be plates from the Great Eastern. That amazing ship, that huge ship, the biggest of its time. Was the biggest of its time for a long time. And so it was in 1855, Mr. Smith reportedly told his men to start building what would become the Round Oak Steelworks, or Round Oak Ironworks. So yeah, the building was just there. Here, there would have been a big war which survived a long time. And that war, as we read in this article, from 10 years after it opened, held all the machinery. So all the steam engines actually was here. And there would have had to be access to that underground. So I reckon these two doors here were access for the engineers to work the machinery. And the people that visited commented on how quiet it all ran. It ran like a mill, they said, with wooden cogs, but it was well made. Round Oak itself, I think it was called after the fact that there was a big oak in the area. There's an Enclosure Act tells you that in 1775, one of the boundaries, which could be ancient Saxon boundaries, was called the Large Oak. Now, oaks can live for thousands of years, so the Round Oak might have been the Large Oak, which is what they called this site after. And just here, you can actually see one of the original bridges. So this, I think, is the original bridge, which would have been here somewhere. This was built so that all the different pig iron interests that the Earl had in the area could be turned into wrought in one place. It was bringing it all together. I mean, there's an article here written 10 years after it opened, and it gives us a massive insight into what was going on. So he reads this. This is from an article in a journal 10 years after it opened. So a man visits.
We arrive at this great establishment via the West Midlands Division of the Great Western Railway, which runs parallel with one angle of the ironworks. A canal connects it with the North Western Railway, and 12 locomotive engines are employed to serve these works, rendering assistance also over 40 miles of railway, which traverse his lordship's collieries and works. The Earl of Dudley's finished iron is largely consumed at the great engine shops on the banks of the Neva in Russia, and is sent to Canton, Fuzhou and Peking in China, to Hakodate and Yokohama in Japan, Kabul and Kandahar in Afghanistan, and even the almost unexplored regions of Tibet are supplied via Kashmir with some particular kinds of iron from these famous works. And pig iron with his lordship's brand have been found as far away as Theodore's cannon foundry in Abyssinia, which must have been carried for some hundreds of miles on the backs of the attenuated mules of that country.
It just shows you, they're finding this bar iron 10 years after it opened, hundreds of miles away in the desert and stuff. By now, Bessemer's process was already invented. Mr. Bessemer, I'll tell you quickly, Mr. Bessemer was a guy who realised the puddling process, that when the oxygen passed over, it took some of the carbon out. So he thought by blowing oxygen through molten iron, that would reduce the carbon, and it worked. But at first, I think there were certain people holding it back, because it would have destroyed so many businesses. So many iron businesses depended on the fact that mass-produced steel couldn't happen. Bessemer eventually got through with his idea, but the Earl still managed to make a lot of money on his quality products, And it was an amazing works at the time. 28 puddling furnaces when it first started, guys. That's a lot of puddling furnaces, double what most of people have. But like I say, the writing was on the wall. The Bessemer process was coming, and he'd have to start either change his ways or go under like a lot did. And the Earl did decide to change his ways, and what he did was he converted to steel. In the late 19th century, he decided to bring in a new way of making steel called the open hearth. Now, Mr. Siemens was a foreign national, his German mother. He could put pig iron in with steel scrap and oxygen over the top, heat it up, and make tons and tons of steel at a time. Where I'm standing now also, there would have been 3 great chimneys. So when the works first opened, it had these 3 massive, beautiful chimneys, all brick built, and it said they were so big you could ride a horse and cart around the top of them. Now, during the 30s, 1930s, one of them was knocked down, and it was a photographer in Stourbridge that caught this amazing photo. Can you see that there? So you can see the original works, and you can see how it's falling. In the next episode, we'll talk to Mr. Hutton, who was there when they knocked another chimney down from the new level, which was quite a thing to see, I think. Some of the engine houses, like this one at the new level, you can see it here next to this chimney. That's the chimney that's going to fall in the next episode. But we saved none of our great chimneys. All of them went. But we can see them on these amazing images, smoking away. And obviously later on in the next episode, we'll hear about the great stacks that were here. Another thing that's interesting is the bull. The bull carried on again a tradition of steam whistle, carried on for a long time throughout the memory of Brierley Hill. It was a thing that was used to call people to and from work.
No matter where you were in King Swinford, Wallheath, or the other side, you could hear Round Oak's bull blow to summon the workers to start work or finish work. It was a good timekeeper, actually.
It was a way of people who couldn't afford clocks to get clocks. I've seen examples of court cases where they know where they were and what time they were there just from the bull whistle. It was used in the courts, it was such a precise timepiece. So yeah, the bull went. The rules, as soon as it was put together, within the first year, they realised they had to have some rules. So this beautiful, Mr. Knox, who wrote the centenary book, 1957, nicely included a copy of those it tells you all the different rules, and there's certain ones, like there's one here that you're not allowed to take liquor on, you know, spirituous liquor, but you are allowed to take certain amounts of beer. You lost a lot of sweat when you were rolling, because there were rollers there as well as the puddling furnaces, I imagine. Very, very hot work. So you were allowed some drinks. And here's another one where you're not allowed to ride the tongs on the rollers. So men would show off, they would get onto the roll and they'd turn it. Now when they were turning it, sometimes they'd hang on to them and ride the actual metal going in. And it was a bit of pride, you know, a way of showing off. But it says in these rules, no roller should allow his tongs to pass through the rolls. It would one break the rolls and the day's done. I've heard stories of rollers breaking the rolls just to have a break, you know, days out there and they have to change the cogs. So the Earl was very proud of the stuff he made, and he'd send his wares around the world for different competitions, different world fairs. He won many. There's a poster here where you can see his stand. And when he had these shows, they'd put on celebrations afterwards, and Mr. Smith was one of the best at doing this. And they often, the new hall was opened in Broyley Hill, and they said it wasn't big enough to fit the people they wanted there, over 700 people. So they did up one of the sheds, which would have been around me now. One of the sheds in the area they'd done up, and they covered the walls with flowers and paper decorations, and the women made a real good job of it. And they also got some torches that I'm sure at the time were used for cutting, blow torches, and they formed them in the shape of stars. And there were 3 of these arrangements lit up the room. You know, and they marched through the town, down, in celebration of the works, in celebration. So much pride, the workmen this is as well, not just the Earl. You can't force pride on people. We had that pride, you know. And that pride was shown on those days where we paraded through the streets and we celebrated the fact that we could make the best iron. In 1891, the Earl put the works up for sale. By then, the new furnaces had not yet started to make their money. The shares went out in 1891, but nobody was interested. As you can see, they were selling the shares for £10 a share. Eventually, the man who had bought the works to begin with had to forfeit on the mortgage, so the works reverted back to the Earl of Dudley. By 1893, the new furnaces that had been put in a few years earlier were starting to make money. They were starting to make steel. The pools over here are absolutely full of this stuff. So whenever you make iron or steel, you get slag. And from 1890s, when the new hearths went in, they were making tons of this as much as they were making tons of steel. And yeah, you can see the size of it. And there's pieces like this all over the fence pools. Right, folks, I've just cut myself to pieces coming through there. Look at that, straight away I found that old thing. So behind me now is the mineral railway, the Pennet line. And I'm standing here between the old Pennet Canal and what was behind me, the Randout Steelworks. So yeah, it was just there, and the puddling furnaces would have been producing wrought iron that would have been going on all around the world to different places for different things. They would have made bars for chains. So all the chain shops in the area would have been having bar from Randow, quality bar. And this is where it all started, just there. Just to my right there, in 1889, the Earl also opened this amazing Chainworks. I've got this beautiful picture here, which is contemporary, and you can see those lovely furnaces. You know, they would have reheated it, and they would have been making chain there for the Navy. Some of the best chain in the world. The Admiralty absolutely adored these works. You know, they used these works for all their main chain and rope. Absolutely stunning. And that's there just behind Hill and Smith. All this area was absolutely teeming with industry. There it is. There's still a terminal here doing steel, which owes its existence to the works really. But down there is where the Great Western Railway crossed the Pennet Railway, not the other way around, and the Earl was proud of that, and so were the people. The people used to say that the tickets for the Wolverhampton and Worcester Railway should have by kind permission of the Earl on them. But I'm also at a very sad spot here, because just there, in the late 19th century, a young boy was coming to the Earl here to bring supper for a friend's brother, and he got hit by a train. He got hit by the Wolverhampton Express, and he was killed outright. And the graphic detail in the paper is pretty much, I ain't going to say what it says, but you can read it yourself. By the First World War, this works had got 3 17-ton open hearths, a roughing mill and a cogging mill. It was capable, very capable, as well as still having his chainworks. And the process then pretty much didn't change. So what would happen is the open hearth would be tapped into a ladle, the slag would overflow and be taken away, and then the ladle of iron would be taken, or the ladle of steel, sorry, would be taken to the moulds. It would be teamed into the mould. So like the teaming is basically when you open the bottom of the ladle, let it flow into the ingots. uphill casting, so any slag floats to the top. Then these 5-ton ingots get stripped at the stripping mill. You can see one being stripped here. And then they go off to what they call a soaking pit. So a soaking pit is just an oven in the floor where they basically bake them until the uniform heat all the way through, ready for rolling, hot rolling. So the first process of hot rolling is cogging or roughing, and that would just reduce the big ingot to a smaller size. So it could either be turned into billets, which are like used for rails and things like that, or plate. You can see a load of billets there at Roundout later on. We'll talk more about that in the next video. And up until the war, the business was booming again. Apart from that, you know, little slip up where the shares didn't sell, the works was doing well. The Earl was back in control. The Pennet Railway was expanding. I'm here now, between the Pennet Railway and the Pennet Canal. That's amazing, look. So that's an original one. Something my dad and my granddad would have been very familiar with. This old box. I can imagine them turning it on to play the football, you know, or whatever. When Britain made things, look at that. Good cast iron. Beautiful. I'm cut to bits, I am. I wouldn't want to climb that, but there you go. Yeah. We'll end where we started here, at the old monument. The new one's just over there. We'll see more of that in the next video. In the next video, we'll be speaking to the people that work there, and we'll learn a lot more about the works in later years after the war. Today's just been about the beginnings of the factory, and the next one, for me, is a lot more alive because we've got real people that work there, guys. But I just wanted to do this first video because I want you to understand what went. If you don't already understand, I don't really understand. I wasn't born, but I did feel the effect through my mum and my dad who went through it. You know, their jobs went, and my dad's job went specifically, and we lost a big income, and that affected everybody in the area. Not just them, but people, other businesses got affected because it's a knock-on effect, isn't it? You know, you close the business that makes the iron, then people that transport it go out of business. The scrap men that transport it into the works go out of business. So much things changed. Roundout, Merrill was meant to replace it, but it just never could. How do you expect a man who makes steel to go and work in Debenhams? A lot of them brought their own staff, I've been told. But we'll learn all about that in the next video. I'm not going to go on too much now. I hope you enjoyed today. Please keep watching. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much. Let me know in the comments if your dad worked there, your uncle, your auntie, anything like that. I'd love to hear from you. And if you don't want to put it in the comments, send me a personal message and I'll try and get that information into the next video, which I'm making now. See you soon, guys. Love it, love it, love it.
There's hussies in the Lang Street Row, standing up on wheels, man, and them the chiels that fed the horse, but black as a pair of deals, man, and never thing they eat the brood, but only coast to eat, man. He was the queerest beast I saw, he had wheels for feet, man. The beast that roared enough, we gave you water, earth and stains, man. We run at seek a fear for rain, the thought we'd break our veins, man. Till by and by we stubborn at the place, got something gowry, but ne'er a word to that to say, but only sit and glower.